Welcome everybody to 52 Living Ideas. Tonight we'll continue with the Analects, book 14, and we will be starting with chapter 13. And we'll have 1 to 2 readings of the text, and then we'll go to Jason's translation. Then from there, we will open it up for comments about the specific text that has been covered. After that, we'll move on, and then at the end we'll leave some time to have some dialogue about the text itself, a little bit more of a free-flowing discussion. So from there, does anybody wish to read their version of the Analects?
I can read my version.
Okay,
I can
great.
read mine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Very good.
So 1413. The master asked Gongming Jia about Gongshu Wenzi, saying, "Is it true that your master did not speak, did not laugh, and did not take anything?" Gongming Jia replied, "Whoever told you that must have exaggerated. My master spoke only when it was the right time for him to speak, and so others were not tired of him speaking. He laughed when he was happy, and so others were not tired of him laughing. He only took when it was right for him to take, and so others were not upset about his taking." The master said, "So it was like this, or was it like this?"
And the next one.
And
The
14,
next one?
Yeah, 14 as well.
14, the master said, Zhang Wuzhang used his fief, a town called Fang, to bargain with his ruler for an heir in lieu. Although he claimed that he did not coerce his lord to accept the deal, I do not believe it.
Thank you. Yulia. Would anybody else like to read their version of the Analects? If not, I mean, I can go ahead and read a version, or is that good? All right, then I'll go ahead.
Yeah.
The master asked Gong Ming Jai about Gong Ming Wen, saying, "Is it true that your master speaks not, laughs not, and takes not?" Gong Ming Jia replied, "This has arisen from the reporters going beyond the truth. My master speaks when it is the time to speak, and so men do not get tired of his speaking. He laughs when there is occasion to be joyful, and so men do not get tired of his laughing. He takes when it is consistent with righteousness to do so, and so men do not get tired of his taking." The master said, "So, but is it so with him?" Number 14, the master said, and I'm really sorry if I'm not capturing the names correctly, Zhang Wu Zong, keeping possession of Fang, asked of the Duke of Lu to appoint a successor to him in his family, although it may be said he was not using force with his sovereign. I believe he was.
Okay, thank you, Joe, Julia, to read chapter 13 and 14. This one has some historical background. Okay, so let me read first. There's a lot full of names. Okay, so the master asked Gong Mingjia, okay, about the grandee of the grandee of Wei, Gong Shu Wenzi. So here's 2 persons. One is Gong Mingjia, one is Gong Shu Wenzi. I believe Gong Shu Wenzi already dead. Okay, so but we talk about this later. So that's Confucius ask Gong Mingjia. Okay, that's one person. About in the when Confucius stayed in the state of Wei, and he asked one guy. His name is Gong Mingjia, about his boss, Gong Shu Wenzi. Okay, so that's his boss. About his what kind of person. So is it true that your master doesn't speak, doesn't laugh, doesn't take anything? Okay, sounds like he's a clean person. 公民甲 reply, the report is exaggerated. My master speaks only when the timing is right, so people are not tired of his speech. He laughs only when people are happy, so people don't tired of his laughter. He takes things only when it is right to take, so people are not tired of his taking. The master said, is this so? Isn't it so? Okay, so Chinese here called qi ran, qi ran. Okay, so I have to translate as, is this so? Isn't it so? So it's a little bit confused here. It's confusing here because we are not sure, Confucius believe 公民甲 is common or not. Okay, because even in Chinese, and we don't know what's Confucius believe or not believe. But if you refer to later chapter 18, I think Confucius' opinion is, I agree. Okay, he probably in this kind of person. So that's just a comment. Chapter 14. This one is regarding another person called Zhang Wuzong. The reason Confucius talk about this person is some relationship with Confucius' family, because Confucius' father, Su Lianghe, that's Confucius' father is a powerful man. I think according to the account, he's like 10 feet tall. Probably in today's Western standard, probably over 6 feet. Okay, a strong, powerful guy, and then he rescued. I think he rescued Zhang Wuzong. Okay, so they had some relationship here. That's why Confucius comment on this person. So the master said, Zhang Wuzong asked the ruler of Lu to make his son as the successor of Fang while he was in exile. I put it in parentheses because the background is Zhang Wuzong had committed some crime and he escaped. And in another way, he is in exile. But he occupied the city of Fang, okay, and asked the ruler of Lu to make his son as a legal successor of Fang. Okay, so he kind of like hold hostage, okay, threaten the ruler of Lu to make his son as a successor. Okay, otherwise he will fail. I think that's the historical background. Okay, so in this one, Confucius said he didn't threaten his lord, but I didn't believe so. Okay. So that's just, these two is just two historical events, and then it may not be that important today, and then but during that time, they are Confucius contemporary. So that's why Confucius disciple keep the record of what Confucius comment on these people. Yeah, thank you, Aman.
Thank you, Jason. And thematically, I think these two actually link up pretty well. I was listening and reading along to see what is sort of the underwriting theme here. In verse 13, he's taking someone's testimony. That's what all of this is. And at the end of it, that very sort of cliche expression, chiran, chichiran, is kind of the colloquial version of really, with that intonation in an English tone. So it implies skepticism, a sense of it could be true or could not be true, which is the commentary on the testimony, that taking testimony from somebody, you need to not accept it wholly, which we take, and Paul was pointing this out at the beginning of the meeting, some of these, very hackneyed ideas, this is their inception point. This is the point where somebody kind of put this down for the first time, that, hey, don't trust it just because you hear it from somebody. Be a little skeptical and do some investigation for yourself. And then in verse 14, he's again sort of going through a testimony. He's testifying about what Zhang Wuzhang asked and what the consequences were. And at the end of it, he says he didn't threaten the Lord. I don't believe this to be so. So what he's indicating is not just the invalidity of simple testimony, but also that those words carry weight, that testimony is I don't want to say a sacred thing, because we're not going to raise it to that level. Nobody has put their hand on anything and sworn to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. But it's just one tier down from that in Confucius's mind. He's saying that when somebody says, he's saying when someone else says something, you don't want to accept it as gospel testimony. But when you, as a shi or a budding junzi, say something, you must be thoughtful of your testimony, because it will carry weight with it. There are repercussions for what you have to say, and they will sort of propel themselves. The old expression, a lie can get its way around the world before the truth can put its boots on. Your testimony will have its own momentum that go beyond your moment of saying it. So be thoughtful what you're actually testifying to other people.
Sorry, I was on mute. Thank you, Mon and Jason. Now we'll open it up for comments. Welcome, Quan. We're covering number 13 and 14. So maybe if I could actually just ask a quick question. What is he saying about essentially the successor, like essentially the process of appointing a successor? Number 14.
Okay, so number 14, the word is a let me show. Okay, so basics. He talked about, just read the word by word. Zhang Wuzhong, that's the person. Okay, he used the city called Fang. Okay, ask his successor. Okay, his son. Okay, become, because Zhang Wuzhong was the how do you call it, fiefdom. Okay, he is the lord of this city, because that's the feudalism system, right? The duke of Lu, and underneath they have the city of Fang. Okay, the head of the city is Zhang Wuzhong, and then because he is exiled, so Zhang Wuzhong asked the ruler of Lu to make his son as the lord of city of Fang. Okay, so he said he is not threatening the ruler of Lu, but Confucius doesn't believe so. Okay, so that's the story. Okay, the background is Zhang Wuzhong is a guy who being claimed is smart, a lot of wisdom, and then he commits some crime. It's supposed to be punished, but he still occupied his own city, and the kind of threat the ruler or the duke of Lu to make his son as a legal successor of the city. Okay, and he said he's not threatened, but Confucius said, "Oh no, I don't believe so." It's kind of like the contemporary events, and the Confucius is just common. I'm not sure how significant of this one, and then that's the story I read. Yeah, so
A
Thank you.
parallel
Thank you.
might be if Henry Ford went to his son and said, put this person in charge of accounting. I think that'd be a really good idea. The weight that you carry by what you're asking has an implicit threat to it that it makes it hard to defy you. And that is what he's kind of getting at, that the weight of the words, because of this person's position and his history, made this implicitly a threat, even though he says, I wasn't threatening him. No, but you were asking without good faith.
thank you, Amam.
Yeah, thank you. That helps give me a little bit of context. I appreciate that, both of you. Quan.
Yeah, there is a note in the Eno translation which might be useful. It's written that Zhang Wuzhong was the leader of one of the red families of Lu. Confucius' father was in his service. So Zhang fled into exile in 550 BCE, so a year after Confucius' birth. But prior to doing so, in return for allowing the Zhang family to remain lords of their domain at Fang, he offered the Duke of Lu possession of his family's sacred turtle. So apparently he gave his family's sacred turtle to the Duke of Lu. And because of that animal having a special value, I suppose, the Duke of Lu allowed his family to stay the lords of Fang, even if he was himself in exile since 550 BC. So there was really no coercion, if we believe Robert Eno. There was a transaction.
Yeah, it seemed like a bit of coercion. I don't know, to me, initially, but that was my impression. But I'm going to be honest. Number 14 was kind of a mystery to me.
Yeah, I think number 14, and at least I don't see that's important. The reason I don't see it's important because probably don't have other historical account to talk about these things, right? Kwang, have you read any other historical account about this other than?
No, except for at 518 of the Analects, there is a comment, a story about Zhang Wuzhong grandfather, who precisely built a kind of temple for that sacred turtle.
Turtle, for turtle.
Yes, and I suppose that turtle
No, that one was Zhang Wenzong, not Zhang.
Exactly, his grandfather.
Oh, that's his grandfather?
Exactly.
Okay.
Because
okay.
because as you know, turtles can live many years.
Yeah.
So
okay. So Zhang Wenzong is his grandfather.
Exactly, and
Okay.
having built a temple for that turtle, apparently violating rituals because he used the same symbols that is supposedly only for the king of Zhou. So that animal must have a very special value since the Duke of Lu was willing to exchange it for a domain.
Yeah, we might not see that's important, but Confucius may see that's important because first, that's his contemporary. Secondary, his father used to, I think, work for them or, had a relationship with Zhang Wuzhong. So, and that's a Confucius' hometown. That's the place Confucius was, I think, was born, or at least his childhood, or at least his father used to work there. So to Confucius, that's important, and to us, we may not see that's so important. But next 3 chapters, the story is very important. That's why I grouped them together. So if you got confused on this one, don't worry too much. But I hope you don't confuse on the next story, because that one probably the most important story in the spring of autumn.
Yeah, but at least we learned one thing with 1.14, 14.14, I'm sorry, is that the sacred turtle has a high value because you can exchange it for a domain. So it's something to know.
Yeah. Well, my mother used to say, knowledge is not something you carry on your back. So,
Yeah,
you know,
I
that.
suppose. I suppose.
Does anybody wish to comment on number 13? I thought, you know, the insights, you know, that were provided were pretty deep. The idea of accepting somebody's word and their in the perception that somebody is good actually versus identifying for yourself that somebody is of high character, and so essentially, you know, before you just you know, if we think about it in terms in the reverse, we ought not necessarily accept gossip or negative information about someone. So why would we then accept positive information about someone as well? Now, it's to a certain degree, we're always going to, you know, rely on somebody saying something, but ultimately it's up to us to make our own judgments. So I thought that, you know, it's an important way of looking at word of mouth, or, you know, potentially gossip, or potentially even praise in this particular instance. Anyway, so we'll go to Quan and then Jason.
Well, that 14.13 is a little bit amusing for me because it reminds a little bit some paragraph of the Chuangzi, okay? Because in the Chuangzi, you can read some chapters when the Taoists are mocking the Confucianists precisely. And in the 14 chapter, the paragraph 14.13, at the end, the master said, "Is that so? How can that be true?" If you're reading that paragraph in the Chuangzi, you can remove the master and you can put Chuangzi at his place, and it would be exactly the same thing. So it's a little bit strange to find that kind of paragraph in the Analects, but I think it's funny.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I think that's a great comment on this. So, since I'm a big fan of reading Zhuangzi and Taoism, so to the later chapter, especially later part of book 14, there's a lot of kind of interaction between Confucianism and Taoism. So I will point out later. But here I'd like to talk about the importance, okay, of chapter 13, 14.13. Okay, I think the significance is two things. Okay, first, let me reread the my translation. Okay, here. I think the Gongmingjia's comment is interesting. Okay, so he said the report is exaggerated. My master speaks only when the timing is right, so people are not tired of his speech. He laughs only when people are happy, so people don't tire of his laughing. He takes things only when it is right to take, so people are not tired of his taking. So the Chinese word used "yan," okay, that means tired of, or you sick of the behavior, right? So I think one thing in Confucius is very important. As a Junzi, you don't please people, but in the same way, you don't want people complain, okay, about you, okay, or tired of you, okay. I think that's first thing. I think that's important. That's why Gongmingjia talking about this. Second thing, he talk about speech, laugh, and taking, okay. So these three things, Confucius, let's assume Confucius believes so, and assume Confucius appreciates this kind of behavior. I think that's important. Confucius is not that kind of strict, like don't laugh, always, have a solemn face and then never have fun. It's not this way. If you do it in the right way, in the right timing, in the right situation, it's fine. I think that's important to me on this passage. Yeah.
Thank you, Jason. Does anybody else wish to comment on number 13?
I just want to point out very briefly, because Jason's right. This testimony does indicate what is proper, and that a person need not take themselves so seriously, though, sitting in the back of church and elbowing each other in the ribs is probably inappropriate. But it's almost a meta analysis, because it's testimony about testimony that Confucius ultimately is saying, really, is this so? I don't know how reliable this is, because I'm asking you about what people say, which itself is gossip. What you're giving me is gossip. I can't absolutely buy that. And so there is a meta-analysis of what constitutes good evidence. That's not necessarily the sort of thing many people point to when they look at Confucian thought, or when they look at Eastern thought in general, especially from this time. But this is a meta-analysis of validity, of what actually makes for sound evidence. And that is, I don't want to say light years ahead of its time, but it's a nice little almost throwaway in the Analects that I think others return to really scrutinize, particularly some of the school came later afterwards. Quan, help me. Not the legalist. No, not the legalist. The Maoist. Sorry. They were the logicians of ancient China.
I want to come back to Mark. Go ahead. But there's something profound in what you just said, Alon.
Well, do you want to keep exploring that, Joseph?
No, it's okay. You can go ahead.
Because when I'm hearing Amon, I'm hearing that what counts as evidence can't just be hearsay, but only from someone who knew him. And who knows whether this first guy is even going to believe whether what he's hearing is true. You can't really say.
I mean, as long as we're going down this rabbit hole, I'll give it just another 2 minutes, and then I'll whip us along. But yeah, he's asking Gong Mingjia about his master because of rumor. I've heard all this rumor. He gets then conflictory testimony from Gong Mingjia, and now it's raised the question in his mind of, okay, perhaps you are a more reliable source, but what you're telling me is so antithetical. It's so the complete opposite of what I'm hearing from others, that I need to be skeptical of both sources here. I need to find a better way to make this assessment than the direct testimony or the hearsay. And so there is, and like I said, it's kind of interesting because it's a meta-analysis of testimony and then the evidence offered as testimony, and he doesn't accept any of these. And so later schools of Confucian derivatives, particularly the Maoists, who, like I said, were kind of the logicians, not an exact parallel, by the way. They take this kind of thinking very seriously, and they would scrutinize. When can we be more certain about something than merely having an inclination towards it? That was something that was unique for their school of thought. They didn't carry a lot of traction. They didn't gain a lot of steam in ancient China, but there were those who took this idea seriously enough to explore it deeply and try and make a system of thought from it.
Go ahead, Mark.
Well, that wasn't actually what I was going to ask about, but I'm glad that you went into it further. And the master here, our master, isn't going to believe anything that he hears. He's still skeptical. So he's showing a healthy skepticism. But it's also curious that he's wondering, I'm looking at I think it's the Loud translation, right? Can that really be the right explanation for the way he was? And just the fact that Confucius is curious about the way another person is, maybe is notable. Why should he care about who and what this other person did? And the other thing is why is he asking only about speaking, laughing, and taking? What kind of an inventory is that? Does that include everything we can do? Taking is very broad. It doesn't include action. Speaking is broad, but it doesn't include necessarily all thinking. And it doesn't mention, for example, feeling sad or crying, which we know is something that was appropriate at certain times. And it's also, okay, so I'll stop there.
So maybe this is a good time for actually me to chime in, is that, I mean, from that, you're right, it's not a full inventory of emotions, but I think it's meant to be a sample size to capture the essence of what the individual is. But I think, this is something that we can discuss later, but I was literally in a discussion this morning when the question was posed to me. How do you validate your sources? And this is actually an instance where it's because at some point you have to rely on other individuals and you have to rely on information that is provided to you. So what is the process that you actually use in order to validate the information you're being given? Now, Confucius in this particular instance is obviously telling us not to take just word of mouth. However, there is, inevitably, this is something that is going to occur in our lives. And it's really important to think about, how do you validate? And one of the things, and I'm looking for a couple of my notes, but one of the things was that if the person that is telling you about another individual is taking a soundbite or misrepresenting of what they're saying and not talking about a part and not the whole, then that is an indication that that individual is trying to bias your opinion about what that person, who that person is and what they're saying. So that should be one reason as to why you remain skeptical from that source. So, that's just, there's a process that we all can go through in order to validate the information that we're being provided with. And I think that that's a very deep point, because we have to think about that in today's world as well. Should go ahead, Joy.
Can I just say one more thing about that?
Yeah, please.
That if Confucius is putting himself in the position of the one about whom he's asking, like, what would my disciples say if they were asked if I did X, Y, and Z? Then he's thinking, I'm not perfect. I know my disciples see that I'm sometimes too much in this way or too much in that way. But if someone asks them about me, I think they're going to present me really as a jinzi, in the way this disciple presented his master. And so maybe that's why Confucius is willing to doubt what he hears, because he knows that even his disciple would kind of portray him in an ideal way.
So we'll go to Joy.
Yeah, this is something what I think too, because sometimes the people put on too much focal point or the attention to one person, especially the leader, especially the celebrity, is overwhelmed to that person. And I think when the person, they just do the normal way, smile or not smile, speak or not speak, sometimes it's none of the others' business at all, but people would just put too much attention, a focus in that special person. And I think it's really, when I see the last statement about, is that so, or is that really so? I feel like, can all those people leave him alone? Find, the true way that, yeah, the master, even sometimes the teacher, when I teach, the student, they will sometimes make fun or sometimes make a statement. They will feel like, whatever I did, small, tiny things, they will make big deal, or they will make some of the comment. I don't think that is, I'm from another perspective, So the master will say, is that so? And they are never tired of, saying something. They are never tired of, make comment. So I would just like, sometime we will just, leave them alone. The leader, the celebrity, or whoever, on top of the, maybe the on the stage, the focus should be, not too much. Whatever they smile, whatever they don't smile, whatever they speak, or whatever they don't speak, just, that is their normal life. They are the normal people, just don't make too much, comment or attention on them. I don't think it's fair for master or even anybody. That's what I think.
Thank you, Joy. Quan, appreciate your comments.
Yes, I tend to interpret that paragraph as something lighter, because let's not forget that the life at the court in ancient times is made with a lot of gossip. Okay, and this paragraph is showing Confucius talking with another aristocrat, and in the mood of gossip at the court, and with a light humor. Even if we can elaborate on deeper philosophical implication of what he said, of course, because in the life at court, you have to be very careful of what you say, of your attitude when you say the stuff you say, and when you take things or when you refuse things, okay? Because a lot of stuff at court in the life of the aristocrat at the time would be mediated by the exchange of small gifts, for example. So I tend to see this scene as with a lighter perspective. I stop here.
Thank you, Quan. Allison, and Jason, and Paul.
I was just really thinking about, when he says, he spoke only when it was the right time for him to speak, and he laughed when he was happy. He only took when it was right for him to take, so others were not upset about his taking. I mean, it kind of reminds me of the sort of Native American idea that you only take from the land what you need from the land, rather than just taking everything and destroying it all. And I mean, that's what I was really thinking, that some people, they talk all the time, but they don't actually say anything. And then some people hardly say a word, but what they say is really valuable. And so I think it's really, it's just kind of like showing that side of him. maybe the other people didn't believe it because it's hard to believe, but I think it's an important value that sometimes we forget about.
Agreed. I think awareness of the situation and timing and appropriate reaction are, I almost go so far as to say they're virtues, but they probably don't reach that level. But anyway, Jason.
Yeah, I thank you, Kwang, talking about this kind of, you said the situation, what should be the light gossip, in the royal court. Okay, we should, and I don't expect we have this kind of extensive discussion on this. But anyway, since Mark also make some important point, and I've been quiet thinking for a while. His first challenge is talking about these three things, right? Speak, laugh, and take, right? I think the situation is this, because you always in the royal court, you always be easier to be quiet than speaking. Should always be silent, okay, or no expression than nothing. Always to refusing then take something. That's an easier way to behave. And then the Gongmingjia talk about his boss, speak in the right time, take in the right situation, and laugh when people are happy. So I think that's important. And that comes to second important question or remark from Mark about how do you present your boss, right? Because that's a subtle skill, because you don't become like brag about your boss. You try to be humble. When you ask about myself, I can be very humble. I say, oh, I don't know anything. I make a lot of mistakes. I try to correct myself. But if you ask my subordinate or my son, he tried to present me, he cannot say this way. It's a very, very difficult skill. Okay, and then just pay attention. In chapter 25, we will not cover today, but next week, Qu Boyu, that's Confucius' friend, his messenger can well present his boss. Because if you think of this, when people ask about how's your boss, you don't want to brag it. Well, of course, in America, you probably fine to brag it, but that's assumed in the ancient Chinese society. You should not brag about your boss, but you try to be humble. But in what way you can be humble about your boss? I think that's a very difficult skill. All right, I'll stop here.
Thank you so much, Jason. Paul, and then we'll go to the next set.
Yeah, this was a perfect embodiment of what I said I loved about this, which is all these different frames that you guys put out here, from the light, court gossip, to like the deepest, like historical precedent setting concepts. But I think it highlights the idea about how future generations read a text like this, and then they put their meaning on it. But and I heard shades of that in this conversation. But I want to ask, and because thinking about other things we've said, and taking this more seriously than just sort of a little bit of humor about light gossip on the court, which I'm going into that approach for a moment. I recall one of the readings, we found someone, Confucius or whoever was talking at that point, putting honor of the family above truth, essentially, and saying, of course, the honorable man lies and conceals his family's misdeeds. I'm overstating that. So I'm relating that to this, like, you better raise your eyebrows and be skeptical, because that's the norm, is you don't tell the truth about your dirty laundry in the court or something. I'm just asking if that's a valid way to think about this. And secondly, if the things that the wise person doesn't do, about he doesn't, talking, taking, all that, is this element of control of one's being, complete control of one's being. So you choose your responses in a way that is exactly what is needed, but that implies a lot of self-control, a lot of control of emotion. And is that part of this? So those are my questions and comments.
I'm going to defer to Jason or Quan on that, or if Aman is there.
Kwang, you have an answer on that? Or
Go ahead, Jason.
no, I no.
No, you first. No, you first. No, you first.
Okay.
That's very Confucian.
Could I jump?
I do
Yeah.
I do want to say I do think that an element of the self-control is important in what's being conveyed here.
Yeah. Well, I would say that I'm happy that everyone is interested by that paragraph, okay? Because it shows that this paragraph has true value because it narrates the circumstances with humor, but at the same time, it points to three things which are very important in the life of an aristocrat of ancient China: your behavior, what you say, the way you say it, the way you express your humor, and your way you take things or you refuse things, okay? Because once again, a lot of relations in among the aristocrats of ancient China would go through the exchange of small gifts. And the way that you would react to a small gift from another aristocrat can have enormous national consequences. Okay, so I think that the fact that we discussed for 15 minutes about those lines show that the writer of that paragraph has been completely successful because he introduced things with humor, but at the same time, everyone here understood that he was talking about serious and vital things.
Thank you, Juan. Mark, briefly, please, so we can move on.
Yeah, when you said gifts, Quan, it made me think of when the president receives a gift from the queen, or the president gives a gift to another head of state, the meaning of that. But I was going to react to, I think, what Paul said by just asking, isn't the relationship between master and pupil one of the 5 fundamental relationships? So it would in some ways be related to the relationship between parent and child, Paul, that you were mentioning from an earlier passage. And there's, between the leader and the subject, and between husband and wife, and between siblings, I guess would be the 5th one.
Yeah, exactly.
So if we can bring that in at all.
Well, why don't we table that for the discussion afterwards? I think that's a very good point. And that's something we can explore a little bit more deeply. So why don't we
before we read the next set, okay, first I really appreciate we spent 1 hour to discuss 2 verses, which at beginning I don't see that's important, but turn out it's important for everyone. But doesn't matter how you take this one. I just want to emphasize the next 3 chapter. The historic background is 100 times more important than this Gong Mingjia or Zhang Wenzong, this kind of person. It's very, very important history. So even you think the first 2 lines are very important, I just want everyone to think the next story is even more important historically. So before we read this one, I kind of like brief about the story because it will be full of names, but all these names are very important. First, I'd like to mention they have the Duke Wen of Jin and the Duke Huan of Qi. Okay, these 2 persons are about 100 years before Confucius. So Confucius lived in the time there's a feudalism system and there's no leader. But 100 years before, even the central government, or so-called the Zhou, the state of Zhou, the common emperor, is weak. But among the warlord, they have the leader. One is Duke Wen of Jin. Another one is Duke Huan of Qi. And Duke Huan of Qi is the first one. So Confucius really respect this one, because Confucius said his idea is we should go back to the older society. Even the Zhou government is weak, but if we have a leader, everything will be much better. So that's the first historical background. And the second thing I'd like to talk about is how does the Duke Huan of Qi become a leader? Because he used a very smart, capable prime minister. His name is Guanzong. Okay, Guanzong, this person has been mentioned many times in Confucius, and sometimes being viewed as the founder or the grandfather of the legalism. Okay, but because of his contribution, Confucius still appreciates his work. And he did something very strange, because when the Duke Huan of Qi, okay, when he was a prince, he and his brother Zhou, okay, remember there's a one called Duke Huan of Qi, another one is Zhou, Prince Zhou. These two are fighting for the throne. Guanzong is the chief advisor for Zhou, okay, so they are fighting, and Guanzong is a good archer. He tried to kill Duke Huan of Qi, but Duke Huan of Qi survived, and turned out Duke Huan of Qi become the emperor, or become the duke, and then he killed his brother. Okay, so he originally supposed Guanzong would be also put into prison because he wanted to kill the duke, but turned out Guanzong become his prime minister. Okay, so and turned out to help him, become a leader of during that time. So that's the historical background. And then with this background, and we read this one, I hope will be a little bit more clear. And this story is the most important story. They even have more people involved. We can spend 2 hours to talk about this story, but I just put the name, show up in this one, and just remember this one could be the most important story in the spring and autumn. Okay, so I'll stop here, and then we can start to read it. Unless you have something not clear about this story. Then...
Jason, just a quick question. Did you say at the end that Guangzhou became the minister to Duke Wen?
Yeah, Duke Wen of Duke Huan of Qi, the hegemonic, the leader of the warlord.
And that was the one whom Guangzhou had tried to shoot with an arrow, right?
No, he became the prime minister of his enemy, his old enemy. Okay.
Okay.
So people, Confucius disciple, okay, complain about Guanzong. He talk about, Guanzong should sacrifice, for his boss, right, for his lord, because his lord got killed, and then you should die for your boss, or at least, but turn out that he didn't die for his boss. He worked for his boss' enemy. Okay, so I think that's the story. But Confucius still think, okay, he did the right thing. Okay, so I think that's the background, and then we can start to read. And this name will keep showing up through the Analects.
Thank you for that. So who would like to read their version?
I can read.
Thank you, Joy.
Yes, 14:15, right? Okay, the
16.
master say, yeah. Okay, the master, right? Yeah, the master say, Duke Wen of Jin was devious and not upright. Duke Huan of Qi was upright and not devious. Okay, 14:16. Zilu said when Huan Gong assassinated Gong Ziju, Zhao Hu followed him to his death, and Guangzhong did not. He had not fully developed his humanness. Had he, the master say, when Huan Gong unified the nobles, it was not through military force, but by the efforts of Guangzhong. How about this level of humanity?
And the 17th.
17?
Yeah. Or 60.
Huh?
Yeah, 17. Yes, 17.
17?
You're right.
Okay, Zigong say Guangzhong was not a truly good man when Huan Gong executed his own brother Gong Ziju. He was not only incapable of dying along with his lord, he became Huang's minister. Confucius say when Guangzhong served Huan Gong as minister, he made him leader of the nobles and straightened out of the disorder in the ring. The people are benefiting from his down to the present day. If not for Guangzhong, we would all be like unkept barbarians, wearing our hair over our face and fastening our clothes on the left. Shall we exercise the sincerity of simple people who will hand themselves to death in the ditch with no one knowing about it? The translation is from Charles Muller.
Thank you, Joy.
Thank you for that.
Anyone want to try to read all these names?
I can take a crack at the leggy version.
Thank you.
15. The master said, the Duke Wen of Jin was crafty and not upright. The Duke Huan of Qi was upright and not crafty. 16. Zulu said, the Duke Huan caused his brother Jiu to be killed when Xiaohu died with his master, but Guanzhong did not die. May not I say that he was wanting in virtue? The master said, the Duke Huan assembled all the princes together, and that not with weapons of war and chariots. It was as through the influence of Guanzhong, whose beneficence was like his, 17. Zigong said, Guanzhong, I apprehend, was wanting in virtue. When the Duke Huan caused his brother Jiu to be killed, Guanzhong was not able to die with him. Moreover, he became prime minister to Huan. The master said, Guanzhong acted as prime minister to Duke Huan, made him leader of all the princes, and united and rectified the whole kingdom. Down to the present day, the people enjoy the gifts which he conferred. But for Guanzhong, we should be wearing our hair unbound and the lappets of our coats buttoning on the left side. Will you require from him the small fidelity of common men and common women who would commit suicide in a stream or ditch, no one knowing anything about them?
Thank you, Amon. So we'll go to Jason's translation, and then we'll open it up for comments. And due to time constraints, we'll just keep it to one comment per person.
Okay, we are 15. Okay. The master said, Duke Wen of Jin was crafty but not upright. Duke Huan of Qi was upright but not crafty. So Duke Huan of Qi is the first leader. And after he died, and the Duke Wen of Jin become leader. So that's the second leader. And they total have 5 leaders through the history. 16. Zilu said, Duke Huan of Qi killed his rival, Prince Zhou. Zhou's advisor, Zhao Hu, committed suicide, but Guanzong didn't. Zilu said, "Is he not Ren?" The master said, Duke Huan led feudal lords many times without using weaponry or chariot. This achievement was due to the effort of Guanzong. This is his Ren. This is his Ren. Chapter 17. Zigong said, "Is Guanzong not a man of Ren?" So before was the same story was Zilu's comment. Okay, and then you can see Zigong, another great student, have the similar comment. Okay, so they both try to challenge what Confucius' evaluation of Guanzong. Zigong said, "Is Guanzong not a man of Ren? When Duke Huan of Qi killed Prince Zhou, he was not only incapable of dying along with his lord, but also he became the chief assistant of Duke Huan." Okay. The master said, Guanzong assisted Duke Huan to be the hegemonic leader of all feudal lords. The world became one at once. People have benefited from him till today. Without Guanzong, we would be ruled by barbarians, wearing our hair loose and fastening our clothes on the left. How can he be like a common man or woman who keeps trivial promises, who hang themselves lay dead in a ditch unknown to others? So here, important thing, that's I think last time we talked about barbarian, right? So in Confucius or ancient Chinese point of view, the barbarian, just like a Greek, when they talk about barbarian, is non-Greek people, right? Okay, so like Persian. For Chinese, the barbarian, how to separate? Not because the language, not the culture, the clothes, okay, the hairstyle. So that's the way define the barbarian. So Chinese wear the clothes, I think, on the right, on this side, and then the barbarian country, or non-Chinese, wear clothes on the other side. So, okay, I think that's how Confucius defined we are still Chinese, cultured people, okay, not become barbarian because of Guanzong, okay, help all the states in the Middle Land defend the barbarian invading. Okay, so that's the comment. So, Aman, you have your turn.
Yes, sorry for the interruption. I had to say goodbye to the grandson. Real simple. These 3 chapters about Guanzong, they tell you that being a Ren isn't a prescription of actions you follow. It is a culmination of your personality, your character, your being, and how you go about approaching things, also combined with what those outcomes are. And so that line that's very particularly important here about Duke Huan led feudal lords many times without using weaponry or chariots. This is his Ren. This is his Ren. That's the significance, that you are taking the humanity of others into account in your actions. And so I think all 3 of these chapters really try to get that point across, that you can be Ren if you are Ren, not by doing steps A, B, and C along the way.
Perfect. Thank you for that. So I see Yulia, you have your hand up.
I had just had a quick logistical question. So if Guan Zhang had tried to kill Du Quan with an arrow earlier, why did Du Quan trust him enough to hire him as his prime minister?
Okay, that's a long story because Guanzong had a good friend called Bao Shu. Okay, that's Guanzong's good friend. So they kind of like, they decide, okay, either one, okay, Duke Huan or Prince Zhou, either one of them will become the Duke. Okay, so their decision is let's help one on each. So if one is successful, then we can help the other one. So turn out Guanzong's boss lost, right? So his good friend Bao Shu helped Duke Huan of Qi. Okay, so he strongly recommend Duke Huan of Qi said Guanzong is a capable person. You must use him. Okay, even he tried to kill you because he's loyal to his boss. Right now, his boss is dead already. You just use him. He will be loyal to you. Okay, so that's the story.
Thank you. Are there any other comments that anybody wishes to? Go ahead, Guan.
Okay, so those 4 paragraphs refer to a very important period in the history of China. Let's not forget that in 770 BCE, the Zhou royal house lost a major battle in the west of their domain, and they fled to their eastern capital as Luoyang, and it began the period known as the Eastern Zhou dynasty, starting in 770 BCE. So the period from, let's say, 770 BCE to more or less 500 BCE, meaning the times of Confucius, was the time of the hegemons. Okay, what is a hegemon? The hegemon was the feudal prince in ancient China who was acknowledged by the other feudal lords as being the most powerful and would act as the protector of the weaker Zhou king. And that title of hegemon, Pa in Chinese, is granted by the Zhou king. Okay, and officially, there are only 5 acknowledged official hegemons between 770 and around, and the last one was King Chuang of Chu. But if we accept King Chuang of Chu, he would be the 6th hegemon. The 5th one and the last one in the official list was Duke Mu of Qin, who died in 621. So BCE, of course. So when Confucius said that Duke Huan 9 times brought the feudal lords into assembly without the use of weapons or war chariots, this was due to the efforts of Guangzong, okay, his prime minister. Meaning that when he said that without the use of weapons or war chariots, it's maybe a little bit exaggerated, okay, in the sense that, of course, he used the prestige of his culture and of his good administration of his own state, of course, but the fact that his state was powerful and capable to attack the other states was a major factor that the other states acknowledged him as the hegemon at the time. Okay, so culture matters, of course, but power matters too. So let's not be too naive and be dragged into the too idealistic rendition of the Analects. So what Confucius meant that how would it have been proper for him to be faithful like a common man or woman and slit his throat in a ditch where none would ever know? And here we have a major concept of Confucianism, okay? You have the xiaozhong, the small loyalty, and the dazhong, the big loyalty. for the average person, it was expected that he would commit suicide or he would retire from public life if his lord is a loser in a contest. However, for a man of outstanding talent and virtue like Guang Zhong, to be exclusively faithful to his lord would be perceived as a small loyalty, meaning that because of his high talents and his great virtue, he must see himself as the servant of all the state or even the servant of the whole Chinese civilization. And in that sense, there's no need for him to commit suicide because Prince Chu was the loser. His duty was precisely to serve Duke Huan because that would be the great loyalty, the Ta Chong. And that is a big concept in the life of the scholars in accepting the precepts of the Confucianist school. I stop here.
Thank you, Juan. Jason.
Yeah, thank you, Kwang, talking about. That's exactly one thing I want to talk about this one, because that's Confucius is try to, and you can translate as loyalty, but my translation I translate as a trust. You keep your word, right? So trustworthy in the text called liang. Okay, liang means the small trustworthy. Okay, so okay, I die just like a common man and a woman. Just hand it because their boss died, so they hand themselves die in the ditch. Nobody knows. That's not Guan Zhong want to do. So another thing I'd like to talk about is about the wars. Okay, so Confucius in general is anti-wars, but I find out it's very similar to there's one dialogue from Plato's dialogue called Menexenus. Okay, who basically is Socrates talking about wars. So Socrates talk about three kinds of wars, right? The one is war against the barbarian, which is Persian he's talking about. Another kind of war is the war among the Greeks, like when you fight with Sparta. Okay, that's all Greeks. Okay, that's war between the city-states. Then the third kind of war is the civil wars. Okay, that's within the essence they fight. And the same similar concept is during the Confucius time. So he also sees three kinds of, even though Confucius didn't like Socrates make clear they have the three kinds of war, but you can see Confucius idea, he talk about within the state, they have the family fighting, that's kind of civil war. And among the state, the feudal law, they have fight, that kind of like fighting among the Greeks in Socrates' time. And here, why Guan Zhong is great, according to Confucius, because he's leading all the states within China to fight the outsider, okay, which is barbarian. Okay. According to, that would be parallel to Socrates talking about fight against the Persian. So Sparta and Xian will line up together to fight against Persian. That's this kind of sense. And in this sense, Confucius say Guan Zhong is great. But here is a little bit controversial here, because in the previous book, I think in the book, which one I forget, okay, before, I think in the book 5 or book 6, Confucius has complained about Guan Zhong is not following the Yi, okay, because he set up his office, and in a certain way. So the Confucius himself has a different comment on Guan Zhong also, because Guan Zhong, even he's great, but he didn't follow the Yi, which is richer.
Thank you for that, Jason. Would anybody else like to comment on any of these, actually, 15, 16, or 17? Go ahead, Mark.
Well, I just want to mention that I was a little surprised, maybe even shocked to hear about the suicide of the underling in the face of his master's death. And it kind of reminded me of sati, where the wife would sacrifice herself in India, which has been very controversial, to say the least. But not only does Confucius say, no, that wouldn't have been the right path, he seems to disparage the suicide by saying dying alone in a ditch, rather than what you would think would be a little bit more of a noble act under the system.
Okay, Quan.
I would say that first, it only applies to the member of the high nobility being under the direct supervision of the prince. For example, the common soldier or Prince Ju were not expected to commit suicide. Okay, they would simply go to the victor, and it was perceived as perfectly normal. It was not expected of them to have that kind of attitude. So that kind of attitude would be expected from the members of high nobility who were the direct advisors of the loser. However, there is an opening. If the aristocrat serving the loser felt that it was meaningful for him personally to commit suicide because Prince Ju, for example, was the only lord that he would serve, that was his personal decision. However, if another member of the high nobility, having served as an advisor to Prince Ju, think that it was better for him to keep on living because of his family, because serving Duke Huan was as valuable, it would not have been dishonorable from him to stay alive to serve a higher purpose.
Thank you. Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, I think that we don't have to have a conclusion here, but that's a big question we can discuss, from time to time. Is should you die? Should we die according to Confucius' teaching? Should we die for something, right? Because your boss was killed, you failed because you want to achieve something. So should you die for that? Commit suicide, or just personally, I don't see Confucius agree with that idea. I think Confucius will kind of discourage this kind of behavior. That's my opinion. But of course, he also talked about 伯夷叔齐 when the Song dynasty, right, being overturned, and they refuse to eat until die. And he said it's 人. That's true. But it's a big question, does it worth it to die, okay, for some purpose? Okay. So I think that's a big question, and I stop here, and I don't see we will answer.
Yeah, we can talk a little bit further about it afterwards if that is still a point of interest. But why don't we get to, in order to get stay on schedule here, why don't we finish what is it, our last three, I believe?
In 18, 19, 20, so we finish.
Is it 8? Okay, yeah. All right.
We can finish
so
half of book 14. It's a long book, so.
It's a very, that's the reason why I want to keep it moving.
I think we'll probably only get to this next section if we want to keep open discussion at the end. So if we get to 20, that's pretty good.
I think so too. Yeah, 21, 22, 23, and 24 is.
Let's get to 20, to 18, 19, 20, then we can have open.
Okay. So let's do 18, 19, and 20. Would anybody like to read their version?
Okay, I can read.
Thank you, Joy.
Yeah, 1418, right? The minister, right? The minister Zhuang of Gongshu Wenzi rose to the rank of the court officer together with Wenzi. When the master heard of it, and he said he certainly deserved the appellation of refined. 1419, Confucius was speaking about the evil of the Duke of Ling of Wei. Kanzi say, if he is such a person, how can he stay in power? Confucius say, Zhong Sun Yu takes care of his Kanzi's guests. Preacher Tuo handles the temples, and Wang Sun Jia is his military commander. With ministers like this, how could he fall from power? 1420, the master say, if your words are not humble, it will be difficult to put them into action.
Thank you, Joy. Would anybody else like to read their version? Go ahead, Mon. Thank you.
I can read the leggy version again.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
No problem. Verse 18. The great officer Xian, who had been family minister to Gong Mingwen, ascended to the prince's court in the company of Wen. The master, having heard of it, said he deserved to be considered Wen, the accomplished. 19. The master was speaking about the unprincipled course of the Duke Ling of Wei, when Qi Kang said, since he is of such a character, how is it he does not lose his state? Confucius said, the Zhongshi Yu has the superintendence of his guests and of strangers. The litanist, Tu, has the management of his ancestral temple, and Wang Sujia has the direction of the army and forces. With such officers as these, how should he lose his state?
Thank
20.
you, Mon. Oh,
20. The
I'm
master
sorry.
said, he who speaks without modesty will find it difficult to make his words good.
Appreciate that. Sorry, I cut you off there a little. Right?
So 18. 公属文子 house minister. Zhuan, okay, Zhuan is公属文子 house minister, rose to the rank of court officer together with Wenzi. So the situation is, I think 公属文子 is the first one we talked about, right? Chapter 13, right? 公属文子, okay, about his speak, laugh, and the taking, right? Right now, back to talk about him again, okay? I believe during this time he already died. So 公属文子 is a house minister, okay? Zhuan rose to the rank of court officer together with Wenzi. That means your subordinate, your house minister, become your colleague in the royal court. Okay. The master heard of this and said he certainly deserves the posthumous name Wen. Okay. Wen I translate as culture, and one of the translations is refine. And I know Eno insists it should be called pattern. Okay. So I probably insist it should call culture. So, but anyway, Wen is the highest ranking for the posthumous name. Again, that's a Confucian tradition. When a person dies, you will give the survivor will give the person one single character name, okay, to conclude his life. Usually being called Wen, or I translate as culture, means usually is the highest. and sometimes we call wu, or so-called powerful or military. Okay, so if he been successful doing something, military. Okay, so depend on, they have the complex way to do it. So here, back to chapter 13, right? Confucius probably believe the comment from Gong Mingjia, okay, about his boss, his master, because here in this chapter, Confucius said, yeah, he deserved this name. Chapter 19, the master was speaking about Duke Ling of Wei, not following the Tao. Okay, so that's okay. Next book, book 15, it starts with Duke Ling of Wei. Let's talk about when Confucius traveled or in exile to the state of Wei. During that time, the ruler is the Duke Lin, okay, of Wei. So this conversation must happen after Confucius come back from his exile in Confucius' old age. And the Kangzi, he is the head of Ji family, which is the most powerful family in the state of Lu. The master was speaking about Duke Ling of Wei not following the Tao. Ji Kangzi said, if the situation was like this, why did the state not fall? Okay, Confucius said, Zhong Shu Yu attended the guest, which means he is taking care of diplomacy. Preacher Tuo attended the ancestral temple. That means Preacher Tuo is taking care of the ceremony or rituals. Just for the reference, I think in book, which book? Book 3, 13. Okay, Confucius talk about, book 6, 16, Confucius talk about the preacher Tuo, he was eloquent. And Wang Sunjia attended the military. So the situation was like this. How can the state fall? Okay, so I think here is Confucius is talking about even the Lord is not following the Tao, but the whole government has been kind of like everybody taking like today's government, right? Like division of labor, right? Zhong Shu Yu taking care of diplomacy, right? Zhu Tuo taking care of the ceremonial affairs, domestic affairs, and Wang Sunjia taking care of the defense. So the state is still stable. Even the lord, the ruler, is not in doubt. I mean, spoiled, okay, or a tyrant, because foreign affair, domestic affair, military, they have the certain people to take care. So the state still not full. Chapter 20, the master said, if one's words are not modest, it will be difficult to put them in action. So I think we don't have to explain this one because it's typical Confucius idea. You should speak humbly, speak less than you can do. Okay, you don't want to talk too much and then do little. He would like you to speak little but do a lot. So, Aman.
Yeah, these three, I think, link well together. They're all about merit. They're a discussion of merit is of most importance. The examples he cites, whether it's the posthumous name Wen, or the three ministers who run the government of a decadent lord, or even this last one where he says if one's words are not modest, it's difficult to put them into action. Action is what's meritorious. So all three of these verses link together under the idea of not merely being internally beneficent, but putting it into action, doing something meritorious in the world around you is what grants you Confucius respect. And what that respect implies is that you must be some sort of elevated person to be respected by the master.
Thank you for that, Aman. Now we'll open it up for comments on any of these on 18, 19, or 20. I actually feel like Aman actually really did capture this, clearly and in a concise way. I think, again, if we're looking at number 20 in particular, I think that one's fairly straightforward. Yet it's a reoccurring theme throughout the Analects, to not be overconfident, not overpromise, and to be careful with your words. So I think that's very something that we see consistently throughout the Analects. I do think that what Aman had said with the idea of actually putting these virtues into action and what it means to be accomplished, specifically comes out in 19. So I think that we can explore that a little bit more deeply as we go on, but I would like to talk about that because one of the things that I have gotten out of this second go around, if we will, since we've started over the past, what is it? I don't know, 2 months since we've restarted the Confucius meetups, is I'm starting to see the more practical aspects and application of it in the later chapters. Maybe it's there in the earlier chapters as well, but it wasn't as evident. It seemed a little bit more ritualistic in the earlier chapters, and that's how I felt about it anyway. But anyway, I find that the practicality of it is actually being demonstrated and with it through his students or just the ideas themselves. But anyway, I'll go to Yulia and then Juan.
Well, this is just a point about 1420. In a note, a footnote in my translation mentions the Han scholar Ma Rong and says, following his reading, one could translate this remark as, if a person is able to speak without shame, he is the genuine article, but it must have been difficult for him to acquire the integrity he possesses. So it just seemed interesting, like it could be also flipped as the person who speaks immodestly is speaking that way because he has, built himself up to be someone who can speak that way. That was interesting.
Actually, it is interesting because that directly relates to number 1 in the chapter, and we can go back and make that link. But that is, that if that's what's in your notes, and it does make sense that if you are modest, that you do feel some degree of shame. Therefore, you're not necessarily going to allow your ego essentially overtake your better judgment. And I think that's where kind of shame is one of those things that we talked about in great detail a few weeks ago. But yeah, thank you for that comment. It goes directly to number 1. Oh, go ahead, Quan. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. So I would like to talk about paragraph 14.18 and paragraph 14.19 because those 2 paragraphs, once again, are at the center of the mythology of the Chinese ruling class. Okay, in the paragraph 14.18, Konshu Wenzi was capable to recommend his officer Zhuang which was his subordinate, but a talented subordinate, to a position of equal standing at his duke's court. So here we have the core idea of meritocracy, in the sense that you have the hereditary nobility, of course, and in that level of hereditary nobility, Kongshu Wenzi was the superior of Zhuang. However, he was capable to acknowledge Zhuang's talents and virtue, and it was okay for him that Zhuang would be on the same footing than him at the ducal court. So it's very important in the Chinese ruling class mythology, that the idea of meritocracy, the Junzi by birth and the Junzi by merit. And sometimes one can be a Junzi by birth and a Junzi by merit at the same time, of course. And the 14.19, the other idea within the Chinese ruling class mythology is that the ruler having the charismatic virtue would attract to him the Xian people, the capable people, the worthy people, capable to run the state. In this case, Duke Ling of Wei was not someone who was outstanding, but apparently he retained enough charismatic virtue to attract three men who were Xian, who were worthy, who were capable, Zhong Shuyu, Zhu Tuo, and Wang Sunjia, to serve him, and by serving him, serving the state of Wei. I stop here.
Thank you. Actually, yeah, thank you for pointing that out. Jason.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. And I probably need to leave earlier. And today, I think it's Yulia, right? Is that Yulia talking about the chapter 20,
Shane.
about her translation? Actually, the word, okay, 其言之不作, okay, that word literally means xian, a xian, okay, this kind of word. But originally, I translate, if one never feels shame about his words, and it would be difficult to put them in action. It sounds very strange in English, why you speak something with shame. So I change to humble, means a little bit reserved. But actually, literally, that word means shame, because just like in Christian idea, everybody have kind of sin, this kind of feeling of sin, okay? So you were not so proud of doing everything. So same way, in the Confucian teaching, when you speak, you should feel a little bit shame about what I say, because I'm always afraid I'm not able to do it. So I think that's the subtle idea here, and it's very difficult to translate because I try to match the meaning of the word, but it's difficult. So that's another big subject to discuss about the meaning of shame. I think we already talked for last week, but it's endless subject anyway. But anyway,
I think it is important. Can I ask you, what for number one? You use the word shame, though, right?
Okay, let me see the number. You mean for book 14, number 1?
Yeah.
Well, let me double check. Yeah, that's different words. Okay, he asked about shame. That's the Chinese word called 耻. Okay, so that's a different Chinese word, and this one should call 做, or in modern Chinese we'll call 残. I don't know how to explain it. I have to think about it. It's a Kwang, do you have a better way to talk about 池 and 残? You know the two words I'm talking about, right?
Yes.
Right? What is
Yeah.
残? Okay. I don't know. I'd like to hear what you said now.
I don't know. Maybe 残 would be calamitous, but calamitous is maybe a little bit exaggerated.
池